Inference questions or must be true questions are about picking an answer that has to be true, and it's easier to prove shit that has weaker language in it. So if we're talking about answer choices on this type of a question, I think we can use our same example. It's going to be easier to prove some deer are dead than it is going to be to prove most deer are dead. But if we're talking about a sufficient assumption question, sufficient assumption questions are about proving the conclusion of the argument to be correct. Most deer left the forest. Therefore, some deer died.
Yeah.
That's the argument. Most deer
Yep.
left the forest. Sorry, let me change it. Most deer left the forest. And in that case, if I was trying to prove, that's the argument, okay? Most deer
Yeah.
left the forest, therefore most deer died. Which one of the following would allow the conclusion of the argument to be properly drawn? That's a sufficient assumption question. Properly drawn means proven, or properly inferred means proven. Sufficient assumption questions are about building a bridge from the evidence to the conclusion and forcing that conclusion to be correct. The argument, again, is most deer left the forest, therefore most deer died. And we have an answer choice that says some of the deer that left the forest died. Ben's shaking his head. How come, Ben?
It's not good enough because
Why?
if most
But
left the
some could
forest,
include all.
but it just could. It doesn't have to, which means
Right.
it's not sufficient, to use LSAC's own wording. It's not enough to prove the conclusion, even though it's possible.
Yeah, we
All
don't
it
know for
suggests is
sure.
that the conclusion is possible. It doesn't
Right.
say that it is true.
Right. Some of the deer that left died. If most of the deer left and some of those that left died, then we could prove a conclusion that said some deer died.
Yeah.
But it's not enough to prove most of the deer died, which was the conclusion in this simple example. It could just be that one of the deer died, not most of the deer. Okay. How about an answer that said most of the deer that left the forest died? So again, the argument is most of the deer left the forest, therefore most of the deer died. Which one of the following would justify the conclusion of the argument? And we have an answer that says most of the deer that left the forest died.
Not good enough still, because as we said earlier, right, if most left and there were 10, that means 6 left. And if most of those died, well, most of 6 is 4. So that's still under half of the
Right.
total deer
We know we
population.
have
So
4, 5, or 6 dead deer. Sorry, actually, we could have all the way
could
up
have
to
up
10
to
deer
10.
if
Yeah.
all of them left the forest. Right. But we just don't know because 4 and 5 are still possibilities for our number of dead deer, which does not prove the conclusion that most of the deer died. Okay, so again, the argument says most of the deer left the forest, therefore most of the deer died. And we have an answer choice that says all of the deer that left the forest died.
That would work. That would work because if most of them left, that would be 6 of 10, at least 60%, greater than half. And if all of them died, then most died. It's just as easy as that. Now, there are other answers too that could work.
None of the deer that left the forest survived.
Sure. Or all living things died.
Sure. There was a nuclear holocaust and everything on the planet perished.
Yeah.
Sure, that would do it.